Look, I'm not going to say that that was the best Nintendo Direct or anything, but for where we are in the Switch's life cycle, I am really pleasantly surprised with what we found out today. Since a large part of the Nintendo fandom's focus has been on Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, there was this narrative going on for a while that was going to be the last really big game on the Switch, which it still probably is the last truly large title, but there was a lot of focus on that concept with a lot of people thinking that we weren't going to get many more real good surprises or major releases for the Switch, and I think this Direct really helped to prove that wrong. There were a lot of really strong announcements. There were a lot of lulls as well too, some stuff that wasn't quite as exciting as the rest, but the peaks that this Direct had, I thought were phenomenal. And I think the first thing I really want to focus on is all the love that the Mario franchise got. We basically got 5 new game announcements, one of which is a remake, one's a remaster, and 3 brand new games, all very different aspects of the Mario universe, and for me at least, pretty much all 5 are things that I'm very interested in playing. First off, the one remake, Super Mario RPG. I still kind of actually believe that that was revealed this morning. There was a leak and rumor going around just before the Direct talking about how one of the things we were going to see today was a remake of an SNES game, and there were all kinds of theories flying left and right. Chrono Trigger was a particularly very popular one that people were saying, and a few people were hoping it would be Super Mario RPG, but that was considered kind of the outside shot, like probably not actually happening. And here we are now with a trailer for a full-blown remake. Now, they didn't go too in-depth on everything that was being remade in this game. We don't know how much of the content or game balance or that kind of stuff is going to be adjusted or changed. The one very obvious thing, though, is, of course, the visual style of the game. It has gotten a full-blown visual remake that, to be honest, I actually am a little bit mixed on, primarily because the original Super Mario RPG had this very almost claymation-style animation to it. It had this very unique charm and look to it that wasn't shared by a lot of other titles at the time, or really by any other Mario games to date. And in this one, they're opting instead for changing all of that in favor of what is pretty much a traditional 3D Mario look. The vibrancy of colors, the cleaned up character models, there's just a certain aspect of the design that I do think looks really good, but doesn't quite recapture the same charm as the original. That minor complaint aside though, honestly, I'm just happy that this game is getting remade at all. It would be really cool if they still made the SNES version available in some form at some point, just because I like having options, but having a new version of this game for people to play, it is such a gem of a title. Not one of the most difficult RPGs, but it has just a very special place in my heart. It was one of my first introductions to that style of turn-based RPG. And I think the story writing and character cast still stands apart as one of the more interesting experiments with the Mario universe, especially because, look, we're getting Geno in 3D, so I'm happy about that. As for the remaster we got announced, Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon is coming to the Switch sometime early next year, which is a little bit of a strange announcement, only in the fact that it's 2 specifically and not necessarily Luigi's Mansion 1, which came out on the GameCube and also had a 3DS port. You would think that they would maybe have both those games together, or if they were going to remake one before the other, one would be the priority. But no, we're getting 2 next year, which is still a fantastic game, and that's awesome. It does make me wonder, though, if there are additional plans to port one as well, or if maybe a more thorough remake is in the works for that. Purely speculation, just interesting that Dark Moon is getting the priority there. As for new Mario games, they revealed a brand new game that is going to be focused on Princess Peach specifically. As far as I know, this is the second game that actually has her as the main character. The first release was on the DS with Super Princess Peach. No real indication if there's going to be any connection between this one and that game as far as gameplay styles go. They didn't really show any in-depth gameplay for this one, just kind of a little teaser of the fact that this is something that they're working on and they're going to be revealing a lot more information in the future. Also planned for a 2024 release. Another brand new game, and was actually the closer of the Direct, was Super Mario Bros. Wonder. This is basically a newer take on the new Super Mario Bros. Formula, where it is a 2D side-scrolling Mario, but they're getting a little weirder, a little more inventive with that. Some mechanics from new Super Mario Bros. Are coming back, up to 4-player co-op. Looks like you have the same cast of playable characters with a couple new additional ones thrown in. Daisy, for instance, is now going to be playable, which I know makes my wife very happy. Characters share lives, just like in new Super Mario Bros., but the more inventive aspect is, well, that Wonder namesake, where there are parts of levels where everything gets considerably more trippy and weird. Mario's body elongating, warp pipes acting like worms that you can jump on top of, all kinds of really bizarre and wacky things that might open up some new gameplay styles that we haven't really seen in past Mario games. Also, new power-ups, which the main one everyone is obviously talking about is Mario as an elephant, which the real big question that opens up for me is, what does everyone else look like when they get that power-up? Not only was this game just revealed, but it's already confirmed getting a release date later this year on October 20th, so the Nintendo holiday season is filling out after what for a while people were maybe a little worried would be a bit more empty. Lastly, I'm counting this as a Mario game, although it's definitely a little more different, WarioWare. We got a brand new WarioWare game revealed coming out later this year, WarioWare Move It, and I am so freaking excited for this. This is actually, I think, my favorite brand new reveal we got, aside from ports and remasters, primarily because, look, WarioWare games are really fun, the micro mini games are great, but my personal favorite of the franchise was Smooth Moves on the Wii, because something about ridiculous over-the-top micro games combined with motion controls led to it being one of the best party game experiences out there. And while I liked Get It Together on the Switch, which was the first WarioWare game they released on that platform, it didn't really hit quite the same way. It had some inventive new ideas, and I think it had its own shtick that was neat, but Move It going back to the Smooth Move style, where it's mini games that require you moving the Joy-Cons around in bizarre ways, super excited about. Now, I'm not going to go over every single announcement from today's Direct, but there were a couple other highlights that really stood out to me. Speaking of Super Mario RPG, one of the reasons why that game was kind of wondered if we'd ever get it again is because it was a collaboration between Nintendo and Square Enix, and again, Square Enix had a very strong presence at today's Direct, not only through Super Mario RPG, but through a pair of other games that were announced, one of which is a brand new Dragon Quest Monsters called The Dark Prince. This is a side series to Dragon Quest that has really only gotten a release every, it feels like 7 or 8 years. The last release was on DS, and there hasn't been anything since. This is basically the Dragon Quest approach to a Pokemon-style game where you're capturing monsters, raising them, fusing them together to create more powerful ones. While we live in an era where there's a lot of indie games that are love letters to the Pokemon-style formula, I don't think we see a lot of other major franchises touch on that style, so it's really cool to see Square Enix tapping into it again with a new Dragon Quest Monsters game. And the other reveal that is a huge deal to me personally, Star Ocean Second Story R. Now, the existence of this game was actually leaked a couple days ago, but what's really surprising about the reveal is that there was another game previously released called First Departure R that was a port of the first Star Ocean game that got remade on PSP. Star Ocean Second Story R shares that same naming scheme, so I assumed it was just going to be a cleaned up, up-resed port of the PSP game as well, with maybe a couple little additions. No, actually, it is instead a full-blown remake, featuring an entirely new visual style that actually seems like a really interesting way of evoking PS1 style visuals, but in a very prettier way now, where you still have main characters that are pixelated sprites, but then the backgrounds and environments around them are these very detailed, beautiful looking areas, which really evokes this feeling of that PS1 era where you had, pre-rendered backgrounds with more simplified character sprites at the same time. If you're unfamiliar at all with the Star Ocean franchise, Second Story is basically the one that most people reference as being the best in the series. Some people have their personal favorites, but that really is the one that is the most generally acclaimed, and for good reason. It is an excellent game, awesome storytelling, lots of great little secrets, whole different casts of characters that you can recruit across your playthrough, so it's worth multiple playthroughs very easily. There's 2 different main characters to pick from, so that also affects the story in different ways. Just an absolute gem of an RPG from the PS1, and I cannot wait for more people to get the chance to play it now that it's getting this full-blown remake later this year. Other segments worth talking about, Pikmin 4 had a nice little designated segment showing off a lot of the new gameplay mechanics, including the different biomes. There's now underground stages, a lot of mechanics that involve the dog. What's maybe even more surprising, though, was not the gameplay they showed for Pikmin 4, but right after, they just suddenly revealed and shadow dropped Pikmin 1 and 2 are coming to Nintendo Switch. They are in the eShop right now. You can buy them, you can play them. To be perfectly honest, Pikmin is a series that I've actually completely missed out on. I have tried some of them a little bit here and there, but never got fully in, and I never played the original one, so I think I'm actually going to pick that up now to check out and see if it'll help me click and get excited for 4. We also got some updated Pokemon news, in particular some more looks at the upcoming DLC for Scarlet and Violet. The even bigger surprise, though, Detective Pikachu 2 got a release date. This was revealed in 2019, like back alongside the movie, and they haven't said a thing about it since. I was actually thinking about making a video where I talked about Nintendo Switch games and wondering where they're at right now, also including Metroid Prime 4, which still hasn't shown up. But Detective Pikachu 2, after all this time, they have finally announced a release date happening later this year, so there's one you can mark off the list that we finally know about. One other first-party announcement we got that was not for a game, but for Amiibo, Tears of the Kingdom is getting 2 more tied-in Amiibo releases happening later this holiday season for Zelda and Ganondorf, both of which look absolutely gorgeous. So those to me were a lot of the really big reveals. Aside from that, we did get a lot of either updated trailers for games that we recently learned about that we kind of knew were coming to Switch, but now it's extra clear and they're talking about them specifically. For instance, Sonic Superstars we got another look at, showing off the 4 playable characters and that you can do 4-player co-op. Persona 5 Tactica got confirmed for the Switch, which at the same time also is kind of confirming that Persona 3 Reload is not coming to the Switch. I think there's a chance that that's going to end up getting maybe a delayed port down the line. It might just need a little extra work because it is a fancier looking game that needs a little extra attention to make sure it runs smoothly on the Switch. Not set in stone though, a very good chance that's just going to sit out the Switch entirely. We'll find out. A whole lot of ports got announced. We're getting the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 coming to Switch, which includes Metal Gear Solids 1, 2, and 3, as well as ways to play the original Metal Gear 1 and 2 and the NES games Metal Gear 1 and 2, which are different compared to the actual Metal Gear 1 and 2. It's a whole thing. The point is they're all in the collection. Batman Arkham Trilogy is coming to the Switch. Vampire Survivors is getting a Switch port, as well as Myth Force. As far as kind of smaller titles that were brand new reveals that looked interesting to me, Silent Hope is an action RPG dungeon crawler that looks interesting to me. It's not necessarily an insta-buy, but it is something that has my attention and I want to learn a little more about. And Headbangers Rhythm Royale is a absolutely bizarre looking rhythm game with a focus on pigeons that, I don't know, I kind of want to know more. So yeah, all in all, I think that was a really good Direct. I know it definitely wasn't the strongest one that Nintendo has ever done, but again, we're hitting a point in the Switch's life cycle where I think things are going to start to wind down a little bit as we get prepared for whatever the next thing is, whether that's a Switch 2, a Switch Pro, something entirely new from Nintendo, who actually knows? But I think the really important thing that this Direct showed off is that Nintendo is not done with the Switch yet. There is a lot of stuff on the way for both this holiday season and early next year, and I think this did a great job of showcasing that. So those are my thoughts on today's Nintendo Direct. As always, if you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you guys later.